The Red Sox are honoring different teams over the past 100 years that played here at Fenway Park. Tonight, honoring the team that called this park home. The first team to do so, the 1912 Red Sox. They won the World Series against the Giants, and a pregame ceremony will celebrate that. Right now, Randy Scott looks back at that team, a team led by the likes of Tris Speaker and Smokey Joe Woods.
When Fenway Park opened on April 20th, 1912, the city of Boston embraced the new ballpark, but it was not a newsmaker. It was the third ballpark built inside the city limits in the last 30 years, and it's possible the fans were just waiting to see what would follow.
Ballparks were looked at as factories almost. They were sometimes referred to as baseball plants. That's the place where the ball players worked. So there wasn't this great romance about the buildings yet. What needed to take place for that to happen is precisely what did happen, and that was for people to come, to fill up with memories, for spectacular plays to happen, for people to fall in love with ball players and with teams. That's how ballparks become romantic. That's how people connect to ballparks over time. When Fenway opened in 1912, that had yet to happen, but in the 1912 season, it began.
The emergence of superstar center fielder Tris Speaker and pitcher Smokey Joe Wood was all the chatter in 1912.
You had a couple of really terrific young players, Tris Speaker in center field and pitcher Joe Wood, who were just coming into their prime. They had been promising young ball players before 1912, but in 1912, each became probably the best two players in baseball. Wood went 34-5 on the pitcher's mound. Tris Speaker was American League MVP, hit over 380. Combined, those two guys gave the Red Sox a terrific advantage.
One of the highlights of the 1912 regular season was the much-anticipated pitching duel between Wood and the great Walter Johnson.
So many fans showed up for that game that not only did they pour out onto the field and ring the outfield, but they actually took over both dugouts and pressed so close to the edge of the field that they were only about 5 feet away from the foul lines when the game began. The players themselves sat on the grass during the game, just off the baselines, holding their bats like kids at the Sandlot. That's how many people were in Fenway Park that day. And Joe Wood won the game in classic fashion, 1-0.
That game forced a change in the design of the newly opened Fenway Park.
After the famous matchup between Joe Wood and Walter Johnson, they realized Fenway Park was too small for the World Series. So while the Red Sox went on the road, they added 12,000 extra seats in Fenway Park, extending seats from the end of the grandstand down the third base line to the left field wall, and putting in right field bleachers, connecting the center field bleachers to the stands down the right field line. This was done very quickly over a 2.5-week period. That gave the field of Fenway Park the now familiar footprint that it has.
The Red Sox opponent for the 1912 World Series was the mighty New York Giants.
They were led by John McGraw, the feisty manager who was combative and probably the best-known figure in the ball game and in baseball at the time. And then, of course, on the mound, they were led by Christy Matheson, who was the National League's best pitcher. So you had New York and Boston going head-to-head. There was a rivalry even then, even though the Yankees hadn't emerged as a rivalry. Boston still considered New York its regional rival in many ways, including in baseball.
The 1912 World Series developed into a classic where the winner was not determined until extra innings of the final game. The Giants took the lead in the 10th inning off of Fred Merkel's RBI single, but the Red Sox rallied when Clyde Engel's routine fly ball was dropped to start the inning.
It's known as the $30,000 muff because that was the difference in money that era represented when World Series take between the winning and losing team. And Fred Snodgrass was the center fielder for the Giants, and a fly ball was hit his way that he should have caught, and he didn't. And that opened the door for the Red Sox to come back.
2 batters later, Tris Speaker tied the game with a single. Duffy Lewis walked intentionally to load the bases for Larry Gardner.
The Red Sox won in walk-off fashion when Larry Gardner hit a sacrifice fly that scored Steve Yerkes to give Boston the World Championship. In that final game, Joe Wood, in relief, beat Christy Matheson.
Red Sox fans now had players to root for and a ballpark that could accommodate them.
You went with a group of friends, and to me, that's what Fenway Park is, and that's the reason why in Boston, people don't always say, we're going to go see the Red Sox. They say, we're going to Fenway. That's a very different thing, and that's why people keep coming back.